This is Malibu, the cool, laid-back surfer, at home on the beach. You're looking at Lace, feminine, sexy, but always a lady. This is Gemini, a split personality, calm 1 minute, violent the next. This is Zap, strong, silent, the Terminator. You're looking at Nitro, cocky, explosive, and always aggressive. And this is Sunny, the all-American woman. These are the American Gladiators. And the events that they compete in are fast-paced, exciting, confrontational, visually interesting, action-oriented, and capable of producing emotional moments. From Universal Studios Hollywood, this is the American Gladiators.
Hi, I'm Joe Theismann, along with my co-host Mike Adamley on the American Gladiators. We're here in the control room where we've put together a show for you that shows the best of the American Gladiators. Some of the biggest hits, some of the most emotional moments that we've had on these shows. Contenders from all over the country have come together and compete for that ultimate prize of $10,000.
And Joe, as we go to the highlights of the first round, keep in mind that the format of the show was as follows. 2 male contenders, 2 female contenders, each earning points in a variety of different events. The winners advanced, the losers were eliminated. So right now, let's go and take a look at some of the great moments on the American Gladiators.
Craig Williams and John Shumsky were the first contenders to go up against our Gladiators. At 6'2" and 225 pounds, we knew there was some muscle behind Craig, but we had no way of expecting the manner in which Craig would introduce himself to the Gladiators in a game appropriately called Powerball. Oh, my goodness, Mike.
One of the many cosmic collisions we saw here on American Gladiators. We should note also that John Shumsky was no slouch either when it came to hitting people as well. I think both Craig and John proved that in this 45 seconds of non-stop action that both of them had plenty of stamina to go with their strength.
Yeah, but I don't think Nitro expected this kind of stamina. You can even see him wincing in the beginning. And then just an incredible collision. Of course, Craig Williams, a one-time fullback at Lafayette College. And, you know, he showed his skills again in the game of breakthrough and conquer, which includes a variation of one-on-one football. And it was truly a natural for Craig. There he just ran over Gemini. Now he jumps into the conquer circle against Malibu, which was really like a no contest. Malibu managed to stand up, but he went out of the circle in about 4 seconds.
Many of the female contenders who traveled to Hollywood for the American Gladiators also had extensive athletic credentials, but none like Brenda Hunt of Roswell, Georgia, a black belt in karate. This was Brenda's effort in the women's joust, and as you can see, she went against Zap, and she gave away a lot in height, strength, but not grit and determination.
Just a little girl, she throws that arm up victoriously. On appearance alone, Billy Wirth set himself apart from the other contenders. Underneath, however, this writer, actor, producer displayed as much will to win as any of his opponents. Billy rose to the competitive occasion in a manner similar to the rise of his career in Hollywood, and his athletic performances were right on target.
Billy seemed to have an uncanny knack for sizing up the situation at hand. He would take one look at these athletic events here on American Gladiators and quickly figure out what needed to be done.
He always went into it with somewhat of a game plan. He said his object was to try and get over behind the bush because he felt with the hand pistol, he'd have the easiest opportunity to hit the target. Just dances around to set himself. There it was. He felt most comfortable with that little pistol, felt like he had the best shot at the target.
Now, when it came to the Eliminator, Billy Wirth's performance set standards on how to run this unique obstacle course. Billy didn't just run, he flew.
This is incredible. I mean, they don't even get a shot at him with the medicine balls. He zips across the commando ropes like he was born on them. Now a little swing for life. Of course, he played a vampire in Lost Boys, so that was easy enough for him to fly around.
Billy Wirth incidentally set a record time in the Eliminator of 20 seconds. Brian Hudson and Hosea Simmons' preliminary matchup paired two contenders from the city of Houston and also gave us one of the top 10 hits on the human cannonball. Here was Brian Hudson trying to take out Malibu.
Malibu seems to be all excited, little gyration with the butt and everything, got the hands in the air. This is one of the all-time favorites of mine. Whoa! Every time I see it, I still feel the same way. Malibu wonders where he is, what happened, got a little cut on the head. But if you're talking about hair, you're talking about physique, you're talking about, that's a full 10 in flight.
This is one of the few events that we saw where the contenders had a distinct advantage. Brian Hudson extends his legs and Malibu went flying. He also made a trip to the hospital where he received 5 stitches, but he came back to continue on American Gladiators.
In a preliminary battle between two women from Southern California, Adelaide McCarthy went up against Joanna Needham, the lone female motorcycle officer on the Los Angeles police force. Joanna showed us early that she could indeed use a weapon, even if it was just a pugil stick. The girls gingerly walk out on that platform. Like that impressed me as we watched each of the shows. They got more and more comfortable as they walked out with those sticks. In the beginning, everybody was a little tentative.
On the platform about 10 feet above the ground, Joanna Needham didn't have any fear of heights as she quickly knocked Zap off. And Adelaide McCarthy, well, I don't know if she was the best athlete in the competition, but she certainly had one of the most charming personalities, and so did that lady, Lace, our gladiator. And in the game of assault, she proved that she was one terrific shot.
It was a game of hit or be hit. She lined up behind the bunker, the safe area, with the rocket launcher to take a shot at the target.
Remember, all the contenders had to do was hit that target, and that's exactly what Adelaide did.
Almost got her head taken off in the process, but she did. Of course, she managed to show just a little bit of enthusiasm every time she participated. And as was the case in so many instances, this matchup came down to the final event, the Eliminator. And Joanna takes a little bit of a leap. But right here, she takes a flying leap and tries to destroy the wall.
Joanna, I guess, decided if she can't go over the barrier, well, she'll just go right through it. She went through that, and she went through the maze as well in fine fashion and won her preliminary matchup with Adelaide McCarthy.
And the battle between the two girls from Boston also came down to the Eliminator. Amy Ross goes flying over, lands on the mat. Nancy Petito following her. Amy Ross goes flying through it, and Nancy Petito does her best to get by Lace.
Amy won this little battle, but Nancy also advanced to the quarterfinals, and the two were to meet later.
A junior football college standout, Jason Wyatt, was an early favorite in the preliminary fights against Phil Carroll. But this 5'10" former U.S. Marine gave us a display of consistency in American Gladiators that made him very difficult to defeat.
And again, with his Marine Corps background, he knew how to fire weapons, and it paid off here in the game of assault. The thing that really amazed us about Phil Carroll is on the face of things, he doesn't look like a great athlete. He's not particularly muscular. He wasn't particularly quick, but he did everything just well enough to advance.
He knew exactly how to maneuver himself into position. I think the one thing that stood out with this guy is his tenacity. That was the one thing that was so evident with Phil, is he was so tenacious. He went after everything full bore.
Now, one of the most evenly matched preliminaries involved Christy Cotton and Tracy Phillips. Now, Tracy ended up being one of the top Powerball players out of all of our contenders, although it would appear that speed and not power helped Tracy accumulate high points, high scores in this contest.
I think the thing about Tracy is it wasn't the speed, it was intelligence, Mike. She would wait for the other contenders to go out, get occupied by a couple of the gladiators, and then just move from spot to spot.
Now tied at 260 points apiece, Tracy and Christy went head-to-head in the Eliminator to determine who would advance into the next round.
As both of them enter the maze simultaneously, they both run into the one big problem at the end. Whoa, what a shot by Zap, and there's Sonny. Now Christy manages to slide by, but Tracy, if she had finished 3 seconds later, would not have advanced. Although she struggles and continues to struggle, she then continues to struggle and continues to struggle. She does manage to finish, but she had such a lead going in that she was able to advance.
Joe Rogers and Bernard Todd came to the American Gladiators from the Atlanta area, where Bernard recently finished a brilliant career as a high school running back. The youngest of all of our competitors, Bernard displayed all the right moves in the preliminary assault event as well. Although in this particular case against Malibu, he didn't have to use that many moves. He was dead on target.
I think a lot of people, they wanted to try and do it with the, and he does. They wanted to try and do it with the rocket. Now, there was a case where he set himself up, and we talked to him before the competition. He felt like he wanted to get it done right there in the rocket and not have to run and get shot at.
Now, in the Eliminator event, Bernard did get the opportunity to turn on that speed that had made him his high school's Track Athlete of the Year in 1989. He went flying across the balance beam, did the same on the commando lines.
Bernard he's the perfect size for this. Swings over, manages to move through the maze. Now, obviously, the biggest thing that faced our contenders all along was the Gladiator at the end. That time, Nitro couldn't stop him.
And in Nitro, we were talking about one tough customer. Joe Rogers' effort fell short, and once the dust had settled from Bernard's victory, we were able to determine which 16 contenders would advance to the quarterfinals.
Welcome back to Universal Studios Hollywood, the site of our American Gladiators competition. You know, the quarterfinals immediately gave us a rematch of the two big boys from Boston, Craig Williams and John Shumsky. And as it happened in the preliminaries, we got to see the sparks fly again in Powerball.
Well, not only did the sparks fly, but the Gladiators quickly realized how serious these contenders were, especially John and Craig. Not only did they take a pounding, but some of the paraphernalia, the equipment used in the game of Powerball, took a pounding as well.
They killed the cylinder. Just ran right over it. Craig Williams just pushed Malibu right over the cylinder. We have to go to tough equipment from now on. Thank heavens for the crews to put it back together. Malibu's just going to land on this thing and crush it. Good thing they came apart. Malibu just gets smushed into the ground by big Craig Williams.
Although it is not true that Malibu later filed for hazardous duty pay.
Right.
But once play was resumed, Shumsky, Craig Williams, and our three Gladiators went at it again.
The most exhausting of all the sports. Now, Craig Williams, the way he went after things was he'd lay a shoulder on a Gladiator and then just bulldog him right to the cylinder and figure this was the easiest way to go. There you go, he lays his shoulder in. Shumsky trying to use a little bit more finesse, a little bit more quickness.
When we talked about Craig's football background, Shumsky actually was a hockey player good enough to have been drafted by the St. Louis Blues, but he too demonstrated that he was fairly adept with his feet.
Craig Williams just stumbling around. Those big legs of his got real exhausted after a while.
But those legs came back fresh as Craig continued to flash his fullback form in Breakthrough and Conquer, a form that earned him top honors as a fullback at Lafayette.
Just sheer power. Now, Gemini does everything he can to keep him out of the end zone, but Craig Williams would not be denied. Craig Williams went on to defeat John Shumsky in their second meeting as well.
Well, Joe, Christy Cotton drew Brenda Hunt as her opponent in the quarterfinals. With Craig Williams, we knew what to expect when a former fullback met the Gladiators in Breakthrough and Conquer, but we were interested to find out what the result would be for Christy, a professional stunt woman. We quickly found out.
No power there, just a little bit of moves. Little giveaway, takeaway. Christy came at it a lot different than most of the women did. She used the speed to get by the Gladiators.
Now in the quarterfinals, we were able to witness the ever-so-serious Billy Worth take on lighthearted Hosea Simmons, both superb athletes. And with that long hair, Billy looks like a rock star, and in that case, he really rocked Nitro.
As they move into the Conquer ring, Billy sets himself against a much bigger Gemini. And this, I'd have to say, was the move of the competition. Just simply muscled Gemini over the top for a victory in the Conquer ring.
A move that Hulk Hogan would have been proud of. Now, although his manner was easygoing, Hosea Simmons displayed tremendous determination in competition. His crucial moment in American Gladiators came on his second effort in the human cannonball. The contender stood on a platform about 22 feet above the ground. And watch here. The seat actually slides through his legs, and Hosea paid a price.
His right hand went numb, and we'll see in the replay, his left knee will kick the seat up at an angle where he's unable to sit on it comfortably, so the entire weight of his body coming off that platform is on his hands and his arms. And as he swings through, he tries to hold on to himself, and he just can't quite do it and slides down.
And had Hosea let go of the rope, he might have not suffered some of the minor abrasions that he did, but true to form, he came right back, got on top of the pedestal, grabbed that rope, and knocked Malibu off.
As the contenders entered the final event, the Eliminator, Hosea was within striking distance of overcoming Billy Worth, but not in this event. Billy Worth continued to dominate in the Eliminator.
I don't know what kind of strategy a contender could use against Billy Worth, because Billy was more like Peter Pan out there, extremely comfortable working on the balance beam and swinging from the ropes, and got a little lucky too as he crossed the finish line without running into the Gladiator.
Now, Brian Hudson and Terry Moore were so alike in so many ways that some people had trouble telling them apart. I know I did. So when they were paired off in Powerball, it meant trouble for the official scorers as well, and for the Gladiators. Just a question of who's who. Now, was that Terry or was that Brian? Or was that Brian or was that Terry?
Well, Joe, in point of fact, Terry and Brian became very good friends throughout this competition. Although when the whistle blew, they were all business. Brian Hudson scored goals with great ease, and so did Terry Moore. And Terry showed everybody just how tough he was as he took on Malibu there.
Nice move against Nitro. And they just flew at the cylinders. Both of them just throwing their bodies around all over the place.
Well, how many times have we heard coaches, football coaches, tell us, give up the body, sell out the body? That's exactly what Terry Moore did, a football player at UCLA, and Brian Hudson did, a football star at Mississippi State.
When it was all over, both Terry and Brian finished the Powerball game with the same score. And although Brian would go on to win the quarterfinal matchup, it was unbelievable how these two became the closest of friends as they emerged on the American Gladiators.
Detroit's Ursula Henry always managed to smile at American Gladiators, even when she was paired against Joanna Needham in the quarterfinals. Now, in the preliminary round, Joanna showed us that she knew how to use a pugil stick, and in the quarterfinal assault, our audience witnessed Joanna's expertise with a pistol.
And Joanna continues just to roll out of the way. Some people run from station to station. Joanna figured the easiest way to do it was just to keep on rolling. The timing was so critical when they fired the cannon. Was it aimed directly at the target? Could they get their hand up without getting it hit?
And one false move, and it was all over for most contenders.
Oh, she manages to hit the target. And when you see the explosion in front of the Gladiators, that meant that the contender had beaten the Gladiator with that cannon that fired balls over 100 miles an hour.
Well, Phil Carroll once proclaimed, once a Marine, always a Marine. And in his quarterfinal matchup with Bernard Todd, this former Marine displayed his ability to use a variety of weapons against the Gladiators. First, the pugil stick. With the help of the trap door, Phil was able to eliminate Nitro.
Just throws his hands up, says, see how simple it was? Piece of cake. Now he gets into the assault competition, moving from station to station. Just had to feel real comfortable with those weapons on his shoulders.
This was Nitro's chance to return the favor. Like an elephant, Nitro never forgot throughout this American Gladiators competition. Anytime the contenders did a number on him, Nitro was ready, willing, and able to return the favor. But not in this case, as Phil Carroll deadly with that rocket launcher.
Adelaide McCarthy and Tracy Phillips took their quarterfinal battle to the final event, the Eliminator. With the memory of being trapped in this event fresh in her mind from the preliminaries, Tracy knew she couldn't afford any mistakes against Adelaide.
Tracy was the first one up the ramp, and she was also the first one across the balance beam.
It seemed like the women took so much more painstaking time setting those big medicine balls in the cylinder.
And sometimes that caution cost the contenders. In this case, Adelaide McCarthy, she was knocked into the pit, and that allowed Tracy Phillips to win, but Adelaide refused to quit.
They take their time. Tracy just moving along methodically over the ropes, through the commando ropes, through the maze, just prancing right along and managing to miss the Gladiator, which had to be, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest relief for any of our contenders in all the competition, just knowing that they could get by the Gladiators without getting hit.
So 8 contenders advance to the semifinals, and we'll look at their results when we come back.
Welcome back to the American Gladiators. Now let's move on to take a look at some highlights of the semifinal competition. Unfortunately, the first round was marred by some injuries. One to Joanna Needham, the other to Phil Carroll. But let's take a look at Joanna's first.
Well, Joe, the assault event usually meant big points for Joanna Needham, but in the semis, assault meant the beginning of the end for this LAPD motorcycle officer. Joanna had showed us previously that she liked to use the run and roll technique to avoid those tennis balls. But in this case, watch here, with her right arm, she tries to break her fall and winds up bruising her shoulder.
In all the events, Mike, there's going to be some type of contact, and there was no way that Joanna could have avoided it in the next competition, which was the breakthrough in Conquer. She exposes her shoulder to lace, runs right into it, and then lands on her back. And you can see as she lies there in tremendous pain, having separated the right shoulder, and was unable to continue in the competition. You can see her move in. Now she puts her right shoulder, tries to get that left arm into Lace. She does get the right shoulder, and as she lands on her back, Lace's arm comes right underneath her right shoulder and just injures it too much for her to continue.
Now, it would have been easy for Joanna to call it quits, but what's amazing to me, Joe, is she got up under her own power after this tremendous shot she took from Lace and took on her shoulder, and she performed in the Conquer ring. She refused to leave the competition.
One arm she went in against the Gladiator. Although she didn't win, she did finish the event. Now, Phil Carroll proved to be a study of grit and determination in the American Gladiators, but a fall during his semifinal Powerball competition seemed just too much for him to overcome. As he plants that right knee, it seemed to buckle under him, and he grabs on. Now, the amazing thing about Phil Carroll in this event, Mike, was he went back and finished. Now, this was 45 seconds, and this was early into it. So he had another 20 seconds at least to run around and limp and get it done, and he still did it.
And quite frankly, Joe, Phil was never the same after that injury, because in the human cannonball competition, Phil, because of that injured knee, went 0 for 3, even 0 for Malibu, which wasn't easy to do because Malibu was the one guy who got knocked off fairly regularly.
I think this is the only time that Malibu actually does stay up on the platform. And really, it was the fact that Phil went in with a half a leg, 1.5 legs. There was just no power left. You see him limp off. And as he limped off, he was unable to continue in the competition. So John Shumsky, the alternate, had to fill in for him. And once again, Shumsky was pitted against Craig Williams. But Williams had built up such a big lead in the cannonball, he never had to worry about looking back in the semis. He was off to the finals.
Williams was so dominant, in fact, that he was 12 for 12 in the human cannonball, and you had to wonder what was going through the minds of the Gladiators standing on that narrow platform as they gazed into the evil eyes of Craig Williams, who meant all business when he was on top.
We saw the Gladiators, Mike, try deflecting the blow, sliding off to the side, but the guy's so big. What do? Do you step up in front and meet him? Do you step off to the side? Do you try and deflect it? Nothing worked against Craig Williams.
What you do is you pay up on your life insurance premium.
Then you move on into Powerball, where he treats everybody like it's just a minor obstacle in his way towards the cylinder.
You've heard of Air Jordan. This is Ground Williams with the earthbound slam dunk. Craig Williams was quite a force out there.
He finally does beat his match, though. You know, we've talked about his size and his power. Now he lines up against Gemini in Breakthrough and Conquer. And really, you expected a much louder collision than we got. But Craig Williams just sort of pussyfooted right up and tried to finesse his way by Gemini. I guess he decided enough of a beating was enough.
But Williams did bounce back in the Conquer ring against the ever-dangerous Nitro to earn himself a spot in the finals.
It's just a question of brute force. Craig Williams gets down low and takes that 245 pounds of power. Manages to get thrown off by Nitro one time, but once he gets his hands on him and gets him going in the wrong direction, he just knocks him out of that 12-foot circle.
A housewife and a mother of one, Nancy Petito surprised many by advancing to the semifinals. Nancy, however, displayed great poise in building a lead over Joanna Needham prior to Joanna's injury. Nancy also saw what happened to Joanna when she went the direct route and decided to use a little finesse to score in Breakthrough.
Now she slides into the Conquer ring against Zap. Zap gets down real low, figured if she could lock into Nancy's leg, she wouldn't have a problem. But all Nancy had to do was roll and take her out. Now, what she does in the breakthrough part of this competition, she lines up to the far right side and lets Lace take the angle and then cuts back across in front of her, and it's just an easy score for Nancy Petito. When we come back, we'll take a look at the other group of semifinalists on the American Gladiators. Welcome back to Universal Studios Hollywood, the site of our American Gladiators competition. And with a spot in the men's finals on the line, Brian Hudson and Billy Worth battled in an intense semifinal. The Powerball event served as an indicator of the type of competition it would be.
Well, I think, Joe, there's a difference between confidence and cockiness, and the Gladiators mistook Billy Worth's confidence for cockiness, and they wanted to make him pay the price. They threw him out of bounds, they roughed him up, and Billy finally had enough. He decided to get back at Gemini.
Yeah, but he picked on the wrong guy. I mean, if you're going to pick on somebody, you don't pick on the biggest of the Gladiators. And it just got into heated competition. Gemini gets the best, pins Billy down. Billy's still looking for him. As you said, you know, we talked about the fact that this is very heated competition. These guys are playing for $10,000, and they take it very seriously. And this is what got Billy Worth all upset. He gets by Nitro, manages to lose him, and then Gemini comes over, plants a forearm in the nose, and then slams him into the ground. He certainly didn't like it at all. And as he got up, he just is going to let Gemini know what's going on. He slams the ball in the back of the head. Well, Billy Worth was undaunted after this, continued to move along, tried, and he thought, well, what the heck, I'll just go on and score. Gemini's not going to be around. As he turns around, Gemini just pursues him and knocks him off into the nickel seats, into where the cameramen are. Billy trying to fight his way back, can't do it. And then it just became a matter of brute strength over desire.
It typified Billy's performance throughout American Gladiators. He would never back down from anybody. He was tough, he was ready to go in each and every event.
There you see the bruises on his face, and you know, as heated as it gets sometimes, he walks up and gives Gemini a forearm. Used to shake hands, used to slap high fives, now to give each other forearms. And
doing the American Gladiator version of the Bash Brothers.
Right, that's right. After the slight delay, they resumed the competition, and Billy Worth was still trying to outrun Gemini. It seemed like no matter where he turned, Gemini now was going to mirror every move he made.
Brian Hudson took advantage of the double teaming on Billy Worth and was able to score, although he took a pounding as well.
Nitro just wasn't going to back off from anybody. He sent Brian Hudson into the cheap seat, sent Billy Worth down to the floor, and everybody seemed like, hey, the best way to go is not after Gemini and Nitro. Let's go after Malibu, the big guy with the blonde hair.
And remember those gassers we used to run where the coaches would run you relentlessly into the ground, 45 seconds, 45 seconds? That's exactly what Powerball was like. These men were spent.
I'm glad the days are behind me, I can tell you that. There's Brian Hudson. He just decides that he wants to put a few moves on Malibu. They sort of figured out in this competition which one was the easiest they thought they could handle. And I don't know whether they even made the right choice. Although he does manage to score, Malibu's going to take him again out of bounds for a long ride. When you got down to the semifinals and the final competition, the Gladiators just rose to the occasion and became more intense themselves.
And the contenders were beginning to feel the effects of not just Powerball, but all the events here on American Gladiators. They were battered, they were bruised. This surface here in Powerball, much like AstroTurf, it's hard, and when you hit it, you have a bruise that remains there for several days.
It's just incredible to me that Billy Worth would, as much as he was thrown down, he still managed to bounce back. And undaunted, he just came back in the assault competition and wins it. Got his headband fixed.
The thing that nobody realized about Billy is what an athlete he was, a 7-foot high jumper, a man of extraordinary quickness.
Does all his own stunts in the motion pictures that he stars in.
Pretty handy with a hand pistol.
Yeah, you can just see the look of discouragement. He knew darn well that he was in for a heck of a run against Brian Hudson. Now, Brian moves through the breakthrough part and just floated right into the end zone like it was nothing at all. Now he's up against Malibu and just wings him right out of the conquer circle.
And because he was successful in both breakthrough and conquer, he won 100 points and was able to build up a sizable lead on Billy Worth, a lead that he would need going into the last event, the Eliminator.
Here in the breakthrough part, he just sort of sets up the defender, for lack of a better description. The Gladiator does a nice job of putting a move on Nitro. Now Nitro had some football experience, but he was no match for Bryan. Well, it's just a case of the offense beating the defense, Mike.
Well, Bryan was able to take to the offensive again in the event called Human Cannonball, the event where the contenders seemed to have the clear-cut advantage. Gemini stood tough, but not tough enough. So, 1 down, 2 to go. Nitro was up next.
I always felt like Gemini was the most difficult to knock off the platforms. Although Nitro, he's a lower, smaller guy, gets his rear end down. You see him bend down low, using different techniques, tries to deflect the blows, but it didn't stop Bryan.
Bryan Hudson got in the tuck position and made it 2 for 2. 1 man to go.
You can see him wince a little bit. This competition, the Band-Aids on the shoulders, wraps around the arms, both contenders and Gladiators beat up at this point.
Bryan almost had the hat trick until that mistake right there. He got hung up on the platform. It took away some of his momentum, and Malibu, not usually a force in Human Cannonball, was not knocked off.
You'll see him come off. You see his heels just catch on the lower part of the platform. He gets up good and high, and as he comes down, his feet hit. You see his knees bend hard, and most of his momentum was taken away.
Well, Bryan took a 60-point lead into the Eliminator, the equal of 12 seconds. Bryan, however, was going up against Billy Wirth, the record holder in this event, and Billy was off and flying again.
Well, he was fine until he hit the commando ropes, and then he just slipped. Bryan, moving fast and consistently, manages to stay right on the heels of Billy Wirth. And Billy turned in a tie of his fastest time, 20 seconds. But Bryan Hudson finished right behind him, and it wasn't enough for Billy Wirth to overcome him and advance to the finals. There you see Billy get across the balance beam. I mean, the medicine balls hardly get into play. He just flies across. Right here is where he loses it. Right there, his foot slips off the rope. He was going to take a pretty good lead over Bryan at that time, but the struggle on the commando ropes stopped Billy from picking up enough time to overcome Bryan Hudson. As Bryan breaks through the wall, he realizes that Billy Wirth is finished ahead of him and will win the Eliminator, but he has to move quickly to the finish line to make sure that he can win the overall competition and advance to the finals, and that he does.
Christy Cotton defeated Tracy Phillips in the preliminary round, but Tracy turned in her top performance to turn the tables in the semifinals. This was breakthrough and conquer. Tracy going against Zap. Zap giving her a pretty good shot, but not nearly good enough as her mom, Linda Yeager, looked on.
There, Tracy just decides to move up the field. Now, again, she starts to one side, gets Zap moving, and cuts right across. We saw Nancy Petito do this as well. Take the long portion of the field, get the Gladiator moved over, and then just sort of angle your way in, and she does. And when we return, we'll see which of our championship contenders takes home the title of American Gladiator Champion.
Welcome back to the American Gladiators. After 3 rounds of competition, 4 contenders advanced to the finals to see who would be crowned the American Gladiators champion. Both competitions came down to the final event, and we pick up the action with the women's Eliminator.
After 5 events of the women's competition, Nancy Petito with just a 30-point lead over Tracy Phillips. A very easy amount to be made up in the Eliminator.
And it all comes down to this event. The Eliminator, which starts on a ramp. Those 2 balls have to be rolled to the top of the ramp, and from there the contenders will try to work their way across a balance beam.
As they get across the balance beam, while the medicine balls are being swung at them, they move across some commando ropes, holding on to one above them, walking across another one, then jump onto the swing for life. They come over that platform wall, land on the mat, and start into the maze.
And at that point, Joe, they have a choice to make which corridor to take. If you pick the correct one, you'll miss the Gladiator standing at the other end and cross the finish line scot-free. And again, it's a race against the clock. Obviously, the faster you can whip through the Eliminator course, the more points you can earn.
In the blue lane from Houston, Texas.
And there you see what Tracy Phillips needs to do, a win by 6 seconds, and she will be the winner.
And that's a very, very small amount of time to make up, because at any point in the Eliminator, you can be knocked off a beam, you can miss a rope, you can miss a cone and be penalized 5 seconds.
the kind of event where you can take a chance and really go after it. But if you're too aggressive,
You wind up losing the whole kit and caboodle.
now of the two, Nancy Petito and Tracy Phillips, Nancy has turned in the faster time in the eliminator course, 33 seconds, back in the quarterfinal round. Tracy will have to try to turn the tables here. Nancy with the red ball, Tracy with the blue. Up the ramp they will go. This is it, the final event.
They're close enough for this one to decide everything. Who's going to be the champion of the American Gladiators?
Tracy the first across the balance beam, and now on to the commando line she goes.
Untouched. Remember, she's got to make up 6 seconds. Now, Nancy Petito struggles and holds on to the rope to try and save herself.
Joe, this is going to be mighty close.
Tracy over the wall. Now she's got to move through. She's just got to hope that there's not a gladiator there to tie her up. She fires through. It's Zapp, but she manages to blow right by her.
Here comes Nancy.
And there comes Nancy. She runs into Lace, and she goes through Lace. Both women running into the Gladiators at the end.
Now the question, did Tracy Phillips win by 6 seconds?
Well, if she does, Mike, it's going to be right here where she gets the advantage. She starts across the beams. Not a medicine ball touches her. She gets to the commando ropes fairly easy. Misses with her first step. Nancy Petito just runs into all kinds of problems. She hangs on, so that's going to be a penalty, but doesn't go into the pit. Now she, too, heads for the commando ropes, and then finally blows through the end where the Gladiators just waiting for him.
Both Zapp and Lace had a chance to decide the outcome here, depending on who held up the contender the longest. Tracy Phillips manages somehow to get by Zapp, despite taking that shot with that pad that Zapp is armed with. Was Tracy good enough to win? Here's the public address announcer with the final result.
Ladies and gentlemen, for Nancy Petito, 36 seconds, one penalty of 25 points, a total of 95 points for a grand total of 430. For Tracy Phillips, 32 seconds, 140 points, and a winning total of 445 points.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you what. You have to have been here throughout the quarterfinals and the semifinals and now the finals to appreciate what these women went through here on American Gladiators. Nancy, I'll start with you first. To be in the lead, going into the final event, and then to see it slip away, doing really a silly mistake on your part.
I did. I went in there and I had the lead, and so I thought, well, I'd try to just play it cool and get over, and I grabbed the ball, stupid mistake, and it's history.
It probably won't sink in until a little bit later on tonight, but now that you've had a chance to digest what has happened and the 6 events and this whole 2 weeks that you've spent on American Gladiators competing as a contender, what's it all meant to you, do you think?
Oh, the mental stress of this whole thing has been unbelievable. You just can't even imagine how bad it was. The physical part of it wasn't as bad as it looks, but just gearing yourself up mentally every day, and it was, 2 weeks full of work. It was really difficult.
And it's not the easiest thing in the world to become friends with, say, someone like Tracy and then have to compete against her.
Yeah, Tracy and I and another girl came pretty friendly. I tried to cool it down in the last days when I knew I was in competition with her, because it's just so hard to be friendly with somebody and compete at the same time. But she did a great job, and she won, so congratulations, Tracy.
Nancy, congratulations to you. You gave us a great performance and something we'll remember here on American Gladiators. Nancy Petito. Well, Tracy, you've been speechless almost every time I've talked to you in post-event interviews. What about now? You've won it all.
Oh, I'm so excited. I wanted to go to school so bad. And now I can.
What do you think the folks back in Houston, Texas will think about all of this? Let it out. It's okay to cry. Believe me, it's okay.
I'm going to be excited.
Okay. Tracy Phillips, the winner here on American Gladiators, and believe me, folks, these are tears of happiness. She did a fantastic job. Way to go.
Tears of joy from Tracy Phillips, a 15-point victory in the Women's American Gladiator competition, and she wants to use that money to go back to school. Now it's the men's turn. 60 points separate Craig Williams and Brian Hudson. Not a very large amount, Mike. We've seen it when you come down to the last event, the Eliminator.
60 points equates to 12 seconds in the Eliminator. That's what Craig would need to win by to beat Brian Hudson.
And
Boy, don't you and I both know the size of the
Houston,
butterflies
Texas,
in these guys' stomachs?
Wow.
I mean, you can just see the look on Brian's face. You know what's going on his mind. Should I play it cautious? If Craig manages to get out there by a certain amount, I'm going to lose it all, and I just don't want to leave it on the course.
And again, by comparison of the two, Brian Hudson has had the faster time on the Eliminator course. Brian with the red ball, Craig Williams with the blue.
So many different places where one mistake can cost you a number of points.
But Craig Williams, the first over the balance beam, now on the commando lines, which give him a lot of problems because of his size, because of his weight. And Brian Hudson has taken the lead, regained the lead. Across the barrier he goes, and now which corridor does he pick? He opts for the right one. There's no Gladiator there. He crosses the finish line. Craig Williams knows he is beaten, but he has come too far to quit at this point. Bang! Right over Malibu he goes. He lets out a giant roar and crosses the finish line. But there you have it, Brian Hudson, 500, Craig Williams, 395.
Ladies and gentlemen, our winner is Brian Hudson.
Craig, you told me this morning that when you surveyed the competition at the beginning of American Gladiators, you didn't think you or Brian would be the finalists. And I think it's clear to everybody here, including the Gladiators, that the two men that deserve to be most in the finals were Brian and you. And now that it's all over, what's it all meant to you?
Well, I tell you, Brian and I, we really poured our hearts into this competition. We tried our best. We supported each other. And, you know, we just pushed each other when we had to. And to me, it means, you know, that I had a chance to compete again, you know, get active. And that's what I love. And I'll always love to do it, and I'm glad I had the chance to do it.
Brian Hudson, how do you spell relief?
Into the competition, I tell you what, it's going to take my body a while to rest and relax, but the money sure will help.
In this last event, the Eliminator, were you aware that early on Craig was ahead of you?
Yeah, I saw him out of the corner of my eye, and I said, "Oh man, the big man's scooting on." And I just didn't want to be dumb on the. I knew I had a little lead, and I didn't want to be dumb on it, but yet I didn't want to be too cautious and get knocked into the pit.
Brian, you've had many cherished athletic moments in your life. Where does this rank, do you think?
Well, it ranks pretty high because I don't think anybody can realize how tough this thing is and how hard everybody competed. We got close, and then some people went home, and so the last couple of weeks it's been real tough, but it's been a great experience that I'll always remember.
Okay, well, we'll remember your performance here on American Gladiators. Great job, Brian. Brian Hudson, the men's winner on American Gladiators.
From the thousands who came to the Gladiator tryouts, Tracy Phillips and Brian Hudson have proven their athletic superiority. They've each won $10,000, and they'll be back in May for the grand finals to face the winners from the second round, which will determine the male and female Gladiator of the Year and win the grand prize worth $20,000.
Well, Michael, we've crowned the champions in the American Gladiator competition, but there are certain things that just stand out in my mind about all the different events. To me, it was the shot that Malibu took. That first initial hit as he stood up on the pedestal in the human cannonball, and Brian Hudson really just sent him into next week.
But Joe, I remember the emotion of Amy Ross, the tenacity of Phil Carroll, and the power of Craig Williams. Okay, so it wasn't the Super Bowl or the World Series, but the contenders, much like Walter Mitty, competed like it was, putting their heart and soul into each and every event. And we'd like to salute each and every one of them.
For all of us at the American Gladiators, for Mike Adamle, I'm Joe Theismann saying goodbye.